NorthAmericanSumo.com.
Hi everyone, thank you for tuning in to another interview with NorthAmericanSumo.com. I'm Dr. Matt C. Howard, and as you know, we have the World Sumo Championships coming up on October 19th and 20th, all the way over in Osaka, Japan. This year, the men's openweight representative is Robert Fuimaono. I practiced a lot to say that. I think I still butchered it, but that's close enough. But like I said, Robert is our openweight representative. He won gold this year in the openweight division at Nationals, and that's what earned him his spot. So today we're interviewing him. He talks about his performance at Nationals this year, where he won a match against Roy Sims. He talks about his performance at the US Open, where he fell short of his expectations. And of course, he talks about what he expects this year at the World Sumo Championships. It's a really good interview, so thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoy it. And please check out the website, NorthAmericanSumo.com. Thank you. So first off, usually when I do these interviews, I ask people to talk about how they started in sumo and how they, got their entrance, and we'll talk about that later. But instead, for you, you've had a very busy past few months. You participated in nationals, you participated in the Open. So I was hoping you could talk a little bit first about your nationals performance. You did extremely well there. So I was hoping you could start by just talking about going into nationals. What was your training routine? What was your mindset like? And then transition into, what was your feeling about nationals itself?
You want me to talk about last year's Nationals or this year's Nationals?
Sorry, this year's Nationals, the one that happened a few months ago.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, to prepare for it, I had actually went down to my coach Andre's camp because last summer he moved down to Louisiana. So I was actually trying to get back to my roots a little bit and get some more training because up here it had been kind of dry. I hadn't ran any practices or anything by myself, so I was looking to get a little bit of an edge on the competition, and it actually worked out really well. And on top of that, I also went for the gym, and I hit the gym up a lot. My favorite workout at the gym for sumo wrestling is like one of the best for football players, which is the jammers. And I just love that specific workout for sumo wrestling. So I did a lot of that. I did a lot of cardio, a lot of chest and leg work. I actually created a sumo workout right around that time with the stairs. Mm-hmm. And you just do the sumo squat, and then you stay in the sumo squat position and then walk up the stairs in the sumo squat position. So it'll work your balance, your flexibility, your strength all at one time.
Yeah, I remember you talking about that before at a sumo camp. That's such a good idea. But can you tell me a little bit more about jammers? I have no idea what that is.
Yeah, it's just like a standing machine where there's no sitting down in it, and it's an upward thrust where you're thrusting upward, kind of like coming out of your stance in your tachi or in a football stance, coming from like right in your like squatted down area, and then you thrust upwards with your arms. It's almost like an incline press, but it's all tracked, if you will, like on a track. So there's no flying left or right. It just goes straight up and out. Oh,
I see what you're saying. I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So it sounds like you have much more of like a Western approach to practicing for sumo or developing for sumo as opposed to the traditional Eastern approach. That would you agree with that or disagree?
I feel like I like to mend with all of it because I still do shikos, I still do seriatis and butsikaris and all the different tempo attacks and stuff like that, but I just mix it all in. I don't like to focus on just one thing or another. I'm always willing to add something to my training.
Yeah, that makes sense. Another question before you talk about nationals itself is where are you currently at? You mentioned that sumo's kind of run dry where you're at. Where are you at right now?
Kansas City, Missouri.
Okay, gotcha. So yeah,
it's actually started back up pretty heavily up here. I've got 4 students with me that went down to the Georgia Open just a few weeks ago, and one of them placed 3rd in the lightweight division, and then the other one I think got 5th in the heavyweight division.
Oh, that's interesting. So how did you get those 4 people to get interested in sumo?
Well, actually, two of them were actually looking at Andre's stuff, and they called Andre because they thought he was still in the area, and then he linked them over to me and told me about him. And I've had a couple other people in the area that have tried it. Some of them left because they were like coaches of rugby or different stuff like that, so it was not the season anymore for them to be doing sports themselves. But yeah, I mean, and then my other two were actually my brothers, and they've seen me do sumo wrestling a lot. And then I kept on telling them, like, it's a weight class, thing to where you guys won't have to face me. You guys can, obviously face the lighter people and stuff, unless you choose to do open weight, and then you'll face everybody.
Right, that makes sense. And are you practicing out of someone's gym right now? Do you have your own club? What organization are you with?
I kind of have my own club right now, but mainly I've just been practicing out of my house. I got a pretty big living room, and I've been just using that at the moment. I'm planning on getting a gym whenever I come back to Kansas City. I'll have a little bit more technique training and different stuff like that to offer people and stuff whenever I'm in classes and stuff like that. And so I just really didn't want to go into like a gym or a dojo or whatnot without having all the training and everything like that. I wanted to be able to let them know that I've been to Worlds or been, things like that. It's like, I know that I won the last 2 years at Nationals, but I don't feel like I'm at the level of teaching that like Andre's at, or, some of the other people like Kelly Knighting or Andrew Fruin or, any of them. I'm not really at the teaching level that I feel like a lot of them are at. So I'm just trying to get my experience up as far as being well-rounded as a teacher and whatnot.
Yeah, that makes sense, and that's pretty remarkable that you're wanting to be that ethical with it, because like you said, you've won nationals twice. You're at the top of the competition. But I can understand that feeling of wanting to still feel like you can give more knowledge to other people before wanting to, take that plunge.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a lot of background information on your preparation into nationals. So let's walk us through how you did at nationals. Obviously, you did extremely well. How did you feel about your performance that day, and how did you just feel about the competition overall at nationals?
I felt like the competition was pretty tough. Overall, I felt like I did pretty good. I wish I would have done better against Roy. I really wanted to win against him. He was one of the main reasons why I started at the time. In 2014, I saw his US Sumo Open debut, basically, where he had only been training for a few weeks, and then he came in after having a football background, and I was just like, I was watching the videos of the Open, I was like, man, I feel like I can win against all these guys. So I decided to go ahead and, give it a shot, and I started training with Andre, I think like maybe a year and a half after that. And yeah, it just really progressed forward from there, and I really respect Roy as an opponent. He always gives me the business, if you get what I'm saying. It looks pretty one-sided sometimes, but I feel like I definitely give him a run for his money. I got to win this last Nationals, and then a close call on the middle match that ended up going to him. I was throwing him out of the ring, but then I touched first, like my elbow or my shoulder touched first. I didn't tuck it up high enough or twist my hips enough to get him to touch first. And then the third match, he ended up pushing me backwards, and I went to go step on the back or on the edge of the ring, and my foot slipped right off the edge and right onto the out of bounds area.
Yeah, those were very close matches, but even getting one win against Roy is a phenomenal accomplishment. And that was really the highlight of Nationals this year, in my opinion, was y'all two going at it. Y'all are both extremely skilled competitors and huge people. So it was exciting. So you finished second in the heavyweight division, but you won gold in the open weight, correct?
Definitely, yeah. I only won that, luckily, when I was going against Kenna. This was my second year going against Kenna, and I kind of felt pretty good about myself. I felt like, it wasn't going to be very tough because, like, the last year I beat him 2 times and I didn't take any losses, but he showed me right away. He was like, he got me on our first match. He got a hold of my back belt and got me sprawled out to where I was, like, leaning heavily towards him, and then he just yanked, and I went to catch myself, but I didn't drop my hips enough and keep my legs wide, and so he was able to push me straight out and almost like flat back me, if you will.
Yeah, which was he has phenomenal technique, super phenomenal technique.
Definitely.
Yeah, but you came back and beat him though, so I think that says a lot for your abilities.
But I mean, a lot of the times when I see my abilities, it's just a lot of strength. Like that's what a lot of the problem is that people have to deal with me, is just a lot of power, because even in tight positions or positions that they would otherwise win in, I find a way to like overpower the position, which isn't necessarily technical, but I try to do what I can to get out of it.
Yeah, I could see that. So which other competitors have you competed against, whether at Nationals, Open, wherever, that you think are particularly fun matches that you've been in, or just people that you respect their skill level?
I like competing against Edward Suzuki. Even though he's not in my weight class, he always comes back for more. I mean, whenever it's practice time, that guy will run 20 matches with you. One more. And it's really that really helps out, though, is getting your stamina, your endurance up, and just, keep on going. Like at the camp that they held in NOLA, me and him were going at it quite a bit, and he finally ended up getting a win off of me. He got behind me, he circled around me and got behind me on my belt, and I tried to stop from, turn around or stop him, but he was able to push me out from there. And it really just shows, it doesn't really matter what your size is, or if you lose against them regularly or whatever, with perseverance, you can win. And so that's what I really like about Ed. And then Daniel Avila, I love going up against him. He's got a lot of technique and a lot of stuff. I feel like with just like a lot of the times it's his weight that gets him in trouble. He's a lighter weight. He's not the lightest weight heavyweight, but he's in the low 300s, so it makes it a little bit easier for the likes of like me and Roy to be able to throw him around or whatnot. And so that's the only problem that he has with us. But man, his technique, he showed me that hip thrust at Nationals, and I kind of stole it from his repertoire.
Nice.
But yeah, and then he has we were doing a lot of different techniques at Roy's camp that he had out in California, and he was really absorbing those techniques very well and applying them. So I definitely think that he's one to look for in the coming years for being a top heavyweight contender. I mean, he was already third best in the country as far as heavyweight, but I think he's going to give me and other people a run for their money for first place.
Yeah, I could see that. And do you know where he practices out of?
He practices out of the California club with Andrew and Biamba and all of them.
So he has the best of the best training. So that, I guess that explains a lot of where his technique comes from, in addition to natural talent and hard work.
Yeah, he said he gets a lot of training in with Takeshi and a lot of the other ones. They tell him, a lot of different things on pointers and stuff that he should or shouldn't do and stuff like that.
Yeah, Takeshi, he's every year at Open, he's like one of my favorite to watch, because he pulls out the technique. He has solid sumo basics also. Always fun to watch.
Yeah, I relish in the chance to compete against people like that. I really wanted to face him at this year's Open. I was really bummed that I ended up hurting my hand and I wasn't able to do as well as I had hoped. Kind of made me not want to like practice and stuff beforehand.
Yeah.
I was like, I kind of got to get over that, because I really need to practice before matches just to shake the cobwebs off, or just get the initial matches out of the way, if you will, because sometimes, if you're not up to date on your matches, you end up losing a couple, and then you get in the mode and stuff like that. But I already want to be in the mode when I'm ready to compete.
You just brought up the US Sumo Open and your performance there. Would you mind transitioning into talking about that, where you had this amazing performance at Nationals, and then Open was a few months later, and you didn't do quite as well as I think a lot of people were expecting. Do you want to walk us through that?
Yeah, the day before that, I drove 24 hours to go to the competition, and we just drove 24 hours straight there. And after that, I was pretty tired. I was a little tight from, being in the car for so long. And we ended up going to one of the practices they had the day before, and they had some of the Ukrainians and stuff practicing. And like I said, I really relish in the competition of world-level athletes or really good athletes. I really feel if you want to get better, you got to compete against the best. You can't just compete against, everybody, everyday Joe Schmoes and expect to be the best. You have to compete against the best to be the best. And so I knew that they brought their world champion, their lightweight world champion, and so I really wanted to face him. And so I went ahead and got in a few matches. I saw he was getting matches in with like Kelly Knighting and stuff like that, and he was just kind of like playing around with them. So I was like, man, I want to represent for the U.S. I want to go against them, and I don't want them to think that we're slouches or nothing. So I went ahead and went against him, and I think right off the bat, he ended up getting me in a single leg. Our very first match. He's really fast. He comes at you like he's going to hit you, and then he drops down right underneath your hands, and he grabs your leg and does a single leg on you, like wrestling.
Yeah, and is this Batir you're talking about? Is he Ukrainian, or who is the person you're talking about?
Svetoslav Samirkis.
That's right. Yes.
And then after that, I ended up, getting keen to that move because he kept on trying to use that move and different stuff like that throughout our next matches. With like the next 4 or 5 matches, I ended up winning against him, but I don't really think he was going full speed, so I'm not 100% sure if it was like wins, but I got, my feel-good victories.
Nice. So then you said you broke your hand though, right? So how did that happen?
That the same time with my feel-good victories.
Nice.
Whenever I was facing him, he ended up coming in fast, and he came, and I put my hands up to go against him, and when he came in, it was like he was trying to shoot, and I popped my right hand up against him, and then I stopped that, but then he transitioned into like flipping me over his shoulder even, and then I stopped that as well, but I was like jamming my hand up against him every time I was doing that, and it just happened in one of the matches. I felt my hand, I was looking at my hand, and I felt it, and it started to hurt, and I was like, man, I was really hoping nothing was wrong. I thought I just jammed it or something, but that's literally what I thought the first time that I broke it. And I went up against him like a couple more times after that, but then it was really starting to hurt and swell up real big. And so I was like, nah, I can't do any more matches. That dude was a beast, man. He went through like the whole American, it wasn't the whole American team or nothing, but a lot of the American people that were there to practice, he practiced with every single one, and that guy really did never seem out of breath or anything. He was just, let's go again, let's go again.
That's intense, and we see that a lot with a lot of the European athletes. Do you know, I guess, do they do this professionally, or how are they able to have such good conditioning and have such good talent levels with these European sumo wrestlers? Do you know their backgrounds?
I know a lot of them are wrestlers and a lot of different types of wrestling. The Greco and all the different wrestlings. I don't know what you would call like the wrestling that we do in high school, but they do, those different types of wrestling and different stuff like that. But also, they're supported by their country. Their country pays them. I don't think that they get paid like, professional sumo wise, but they get paid enough that they're able to, not have to work or as much or at all, and they're able to train. I think they said like 5 days a week for 2 hours with no breaks during those 2 hours, they said. Because I talked to the one that could speak English for the most part, and, well, for as much as he could anyways. And Yeah, he was telling me that they practice for 2 hours and they don't take breaks. Like there's no sitting down and breathing or nothing. It's just back to back to back. Right into the next training, right into the next training, right into the next training. And they take it really seriously, for their country and stuff. And so I think because mix that with their hard training and whatnot, and I feel like that's why a lot of them are on their top athletic level.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I've heard that rumor before, but you're the first one to confirm it, at least on an interview. So, yeah, hopefully one day America could get to that status where we can full-time support athletes like that to compete in sumo. Yeah. So then you actually competed in the Open, and I guess you had the initial pool of competitors who were making it into the tournament. What was your thought on the pool that you were in, the competitors you were against in that pool, and just your overall thoughts about your performance in the Open?
The pool that I was in was a pretty decent pool. They had a Norwegian guy, and man, I really underestimated him, to be honest. He just barely snuck his way into the heavyweight division. Like, he didn't make weight to do the light heavy, so he got thrown into the heavyweight, and I really underestimated that guy. When he came out, I didn't come out with a full tacha, but when he came out, he got lower than me, and then he grabbed the belt and just started hip thrusting away. He almost got me out right on the edge, and I dropped my hips and leaned forward and kind of threw him with my left arm, because my right arm, I couldn't grip down at all with my hand. I couldn't put my hand in between their arms to grab for the belt. That just was a crazy amount of pain. And then I couldn't squeeze. I could grab the belt barely if I could, resist, the pain that I was in. But then as soon as I, gripped on and they would move, my hand would just open right up, because there was no way I could on. I ended up, when I broke my hand, I didn't, I say broke my hand, but I don't know exactly, because they say your hand is further down, but they said I broke my finger, but it was the bone part that was in my hand itself. So I don't know what you would call it as far, but yeah, it was a lot. It was pretty painful. If I would have just broken the finger up top, I don't feel like it would have been as bad. But since it was down there with the muscle fibers in my hand, and I think the bone was just pressing up against my muscle fibers and stuff like that, it ended up making it to where I couldn't even grip.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. That's very unfortunate. Yeah, and then who else do you remember who else you competed against at that Open?
Yeah, I competed against the Norwegian guy. Then I competed against a first-timer named Jose Galindo, and he was a really tough guy as well. I came out with my tacha, and I hit him, and he went back a little bit, but then he ended up turning me on the side. I think he turned me on the side that my hand was broken on, and I couldn't. Usually I would drop my hips and grab his belt to stop myself from turning, but I wasn't able to do that, and he turned me, and I tried to slide out of it, and I ended up stepping out of the ring when that happened. And then my last and final opponent was Rami, the Egyptian guy he was about 500 pounds at that one. He was 498 or 490 something. And I went up against him, and it was just another one where it was just, I was able to come out with the victory against the smaller guy, but then when I tried to do the kind of the same thing that I did with the smaller guy, I wasn't able to do it with the bigger guy, just because of my hand or whatnot. But I definitely can't wait for next year to come back and show everybody what I've got as far as the Open wise. I'm looking to hopefully win the heavyweight and the Open division next year.
Nice, very nice, and definitely think you can do it. And of course, this year's Open, the one that just happened, Jose, he was the surprise of the event. He came out of nowhere and did extremely well. So
definitely, I like that guy as well. He's one of the other guys I like to face a lot. When I get the chance, I've only ever gotten the chance to face him twice, but he's literally, I feel like, the same size. Me and him are the same age, the same size, the same body build, a lot of the same stuff. He's even got really good flexibility as well. We were at Roy's camp, and I went to, I was forcing him out of the ring, and he turned and pivoted his foot, but his like his actual foot was planted, but his leg was still turning, and like we thought that he should have basically like broke his leg or his ankle or whatnot at that point, but he didn't, and he was surprised himself. He's like, man, I didn't realize it was that serious or whatever. But when he watched the video, he was like, man, it was crazy. He's like, I thought I should have probably broken my stuff, but I guess I'm flexible enough that I didn't.
Nice. Yeah, and of course flexibility is number one or two skill in sumo. So
Definitely.
yeah, that's interesting. But so you've done nationals, you did open, now you're preparing for worlds. What are you doing to prepare for worlds?
A lot of the same stuff, but I mean, I didn't talk about one thing for nationals training as far as the same thing as I'm doing for worlds. I really think a lot of it is mental training. I try to mentally go through, I try to envision myself winning, and not in a cocky sense, just in, if you can't see it in your head, you won't be able to see it, actually happen in real life. You won't be able to manifest it. But I really try to do a lot of envisioning as far as how the event or how I would want it to go and stuff like that. So that's what I've been doing a lot of, is a lot of mental stuff, and then also going to the gym and doing a lot of that stuff, and then training with my guys and trying to get technique and different stuff down.
Yeah, so you talked about getting in the right mental state. For you, how much of the sumo match is a mental thing? Because the other interviews I had with Justin and Ed, like we talked about before, they emphasize so much how much of sumo is mental. Do you have the same perspective?
It's definitely 50% for sure. I would say, because my brother, one of my brothers that are in the lightweight division, I felt like he's got one of the hardest tachis I think I've ever felt from a lightweight as far as that goes. And his tachi is hard enough to even move me around whenever we're going at it. And so I really feel, but when he went to the tournament, he wasn't the one that placed third in the lightweight division. And so I think he needed to focus on his mental preparedness as far as that goes, because he just thought, I got this big strong tachi and I feel like I got a really good base, and I don't feel like they'll be able to swim me or sidestep me, if you will. But it happened, I think, 2 or 3 times at the tournament that he was just not balanced enough, as far as he was leaning too far forward and someone was able to yank him and get him to step out of the ring, or Justin went up against him, and Justin knew that he was strong, and so he used that to his advantage. Justin hit him with his full tachi, and then when he did that, he knew that my brother would react and push back, as hard as he can, like, oh, here's my tachi. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then right at that point, he stepped to the side and was like, okay, show me your tachi on the ground. Stepped to the side, pushed him towards the ground, and my brother fell down. And a lot of it's a mental battle, man, because you don't know what they're going to do. Are they going to henka you? And henka is just, the sidestepping off the initial tachi and trying to olay the opponent, basically. Or are they going to straight hit you and then try to blast you with their full tachi? I mean, are they going to have a tachi at all? Are they going to, try to leg sweep you right off the bat? I've seen a couple of people do that. There's just a lot of different things that can happen. So when telling my students and whatnot, what to prepare for, I tell them to prepare for everything, but expect nothing. Because if you expect anything, then you're sitting there thinking during the match, like, oh, well, it didn't go down like this, or this and this didn't happen, so what do I do now? And in that moment that you're thinking all those things, they're already doing another move, or they're already doing something else. So it's going to make you think, and, and then you'll most likely end up losing if you can't. It's all about fluidity in the match. You can't have a lot of thinking necessarily. It just needs to be reaction.
Yeah, that makes sense. I like that phrase you just said, is prepare for everything but expect nothing. And I think that describes sumo perfectly. You have to practice for every situation, for everything that could happen, and then if it doesn't happen, you got to be prepared for everything else that could happen.
Definitely.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. So my next question is: you're going to Worlds soon. What's your anticipation for how that's going to go? Do you have any particular goals for it, other than just do your best, or what's your thoughts about appearing at Worlds?
To be honest, I want a medal. I want a medal. Like I really want to get up to the top and represent well. I was supposed to go last year, and I had broken my hand, and I didn't have medical insurance at the time, so I wasn't able to pay for my ticket and whatnot because after I broke my hand and didn't have medical insurance, it was like over $5,000 for the surgery and everything else.
Lord,
so
that's crazy.
I wasn't able to pay for the stuff, but this year, luckily I did get medical insurance. So I was able to get it fixed and able to still practice and come back and participate in the Worlds. I'm really excited for it. I think that I could do really well, but I have to be mentally focused. And a lot of the time, I'll be honest with you, there is a thing of fear in it, you know what I'm saying? I don't underestimate anyone as far as that goes when it comes to the actual point in the ring, because I feel like if you play around or underestimate anyone, they can beat you, no matter how good they are or how good you are. And so I try really not to do that.
And I feel like that's most important for the division you'll be competing in the open weight is, you're facing all types of people, lightweights, middleweights, so I can understand the tendency to not want to underestimate anyone, no matter how big or small they are.
Oh, yeah, I've seen some lightweights. There was even some lightweights when Roy went that ended up getting him out. And so, I mean, it's just all about your mental focus. And I've always been told, play your game, like your game. What you're good at, do it. Don't change it for nobody, because if you change it, then you're playing their game. So, always come out with how you want to do stuff, not how you think you should do stuff or whatever. Play your game the way you play it and try to have them play your game. And, that'll help you win a lot more as far as that goes.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. I would agree with that. Last set of questions is, we haven't really talked about your entry into sumo yet, but I want to know, before you started doing sumo, what was your athletic background like? Did you do other sports, or was sumo kind of just a new thing for you altogether?
Yeah, I did a lot of football, and I wanted to do wrestling and different stuff like that, but a lot of the time, when I was young, I actually had kids really early, so I just didn't make time for other sports other than football. Football was my favorite, so I went ahead and did that one and just didn't really make time for any other sports because I was working and whatnot. I had my first kid when I was 14, and then I had two more. I had twins when I was 16, so I had like 3 kids by 16.
Oh, wow.
I was having to deal with a lot on top of school and working and different stuff like that, so I wasn't able to do all the different sports that I wanted to do. I wanted to try out rugby, wrestling, and a couple other sports, but I just wasn't able to at the time. And then I found sumo through the US Sumo Open, just, looking on the internet, and then contacted Andre in my area, and the rest is history. He just, helped me out with training, and sometimes I'd take breaks from practices, and he'd always be like, Robert, where you at?
I could see him doing that.
Yeah, he always, was looking for people to train with and stuff, and he was having a hard time finding some people up here sometimes, or people that were reliable to keep on coming back to practice or whatnot. But after I really got my love for it or whatnot, I decided to keep on coming back as often as I could, and it was really awesome.
Nice. So when you first started sumo, was it a huge adjustment, or did you take to it pretty naturally?
For the most part, I took to it pretty naturally. I definitely had to learn, to keep my legs wide, my base wide, stuff like that. But I've always had a really good balance about myself as far as, staying balanced and stuff. So that stuff kind of came naturally. The flexibility kind of came naturally, and the strength kind of came naturally. But the technique I had to hammer out, different stuff like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. So how long did you train for before you competed in your first event?
I probably trained for about a year and a half to 2 years off and on. I probably had like, sometimes we competed, 4 times a month, but other times we only competed maybe once a month, if that. So it was just really sporadic on our training. I was supposed to compete at an event that they had here. I forgot what it was called, but I didn't feel like there was an adequate enough amount of people and competition, and I just didn't want to. I wanted to let other people have the chance, to win or whatnot. At first, I didn't really just want to walk through the competition. I know it sounds really cocky or whatever, but I just had a feeling from, watching the people and, my size and stuff. There wasn't even a heavyweight there. Oh, yeah, it was called the Titan Games.
Okay.
One of the ones that Andre and Cody were helping through with another wrestling tournament. And, yeah, I didn't feel like, I should compete in that or that should be my first one. And so I ended up waiting until Nationals, and Nationals ended up being here because that was in like September or October when it was happening for the Titan Games. And then come February was Nationals, so I ended up waiting for Nationals from last year. And yeah, that ended up being my very first tournament.
Oh, that's crazy. So Nationals starting off at the top, so that's interesting. Yeah, and of course you did very well there that year. But I think my last question I have for you is moving forward with sumo. What are your current sumo goals long term? Of course, you have the Worlds coming up. You said you want to medal there. Do you have any other long term goals?
Yeah, I'd like to also. I'd like to, get in. I'd like to obviously, get some more tournaments and get some more, world level wins or big tournament wins under my belt. Maybe travel and do some of the other countries' championships. I've seen some of the European championships or the European Open or stuff like that, and I'd like to go over and do something like that. But besides that, I'd really like to get it into like schools or different stuff like that, because my daughter plays football right now. She's in 7th grade, and she's an offensive and defensive lineman. And I've seen a lot of kids that are football players and stuff like that. They have a problem getting down in their position, staying low, coming out of their position, flexibility, stamina, balance, all those different things. And I feel like they could get a lot of it from sumo wrestling. Not necessarily all the football techniques, but they could definitely benefit from, like I said, the flexibility, the stamina, the balance, all that different stuff that we help provide.
Yeah, and I would definitely agree with that. And that's one thing I've thought about before is sumo seems ideal for schools. It's a body positive sport. It's a hard sport. It's a good exercise. Do you have any ideas of how to get sumo in schools?
Not right offhand. I've thought about, going to talk to the schools. They didn't have like a rugby team or a rugby anything up at my high school until the student body pretty much started it with their parents and stuff like that. They had to pay for, their own jerseys, and they had to pay for all their own stuff, but they ended up starting a whole rugby club and a rugby team at my high school because of it. And so it kind of really gave me a lot of insight on, how it could necessarily start. It could start as an after-school club, and then, after, schools hear about it, then they might be like, well, we want to start it too, and stuff like that. So that's what I'm really hoping for, is that, I could probably take it into there, or even take it into the wrestling clubs. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you're familiar with the anime Hinamaro Sumo, but maybe I've just been watching too much of that. But
no, I've had tons of people email me about it. Yeah,
and schools and to just go and show how it could benefit all the different other sports and athletes in a positive way. And also, there's a lot of bigger guys out there that don't feel like they'd be good at anything or whatnot, and I feel like sumo could really help out their self-esteem and different stuff like that, as far as a sport to play. it's not as heavily conditioning as, football or stuff like that, but I still think we definitely have a lot of endurance and conditioning still in sumo, just not as much as some of the other sports.
Especially the part I agree with is it's just being a welcoming environment. I think anyone can step onto a sumo mat and then just do their thing, and that's perfectly fine and that's wonderful. Whereas not every sport is as welcoming as that. Like you mentioned with football, there's often a barrier there for people that aren't as physically capable. But with sumo, everyone's welcome.
Right.
Yeah, and the last question I have for you is if anyone wants to contact you about practicing sumo in your area, is there a way that they can contact you? Do you have an email they can use or a website?
Yeah, I have a Facebook. You can just contact me. It's my first and last name, Robert Fuimaono, on Facebook, and anyone can look me up on there. I also have Instagram. I have to look that up myself because I don't use it that often. But it's under Sumo Samoan Bulldozer, and you can contact me through there and check out the videos of different matches for different people and stuff like that.
Nice, very nice. So I'll be sure to put links to that on the website when I make this post. But that's all my questions. So thank you for this interview. Thank you for spending about 40 minutes with me. I greatly appreciate it, and thank you for everything you do for sumo. Your matches are wonderful, and it's just really nice to see how much you're trying to bring people into the sport.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, no problem. I really appreciate you having me